Hello citizens, Councillor Gian-Carlo here. It's May 3rd, Tuesday afternoon. Council's overflow of the May 2nd session spilled out into this afternoon and now we're done. And I've got two sort of disappointing pieces of news to relate to you from this council meeting. Of course, on the secondary suite front, Councillor Chabot and I brought forward those really sort of cut red tape little amendments. We pushed that to May 16th because so many members of council were not going to be able to be there for the afternoon vote today on May 3rd. And then we had the pedestrian strategy up. And what I fully expected was that it's called Step Forward. It's a major sort of recommitment into thinking about pedestrian mobility across the city. It's about a gradual change in all of our practice to really start thinking about pedestrians in everything we do. There was a 10-person sort of complement of staff that was contemplated as being the kernel of this expertise going forward. That's out of 4,000 transportation department staff. And there was an attempt on the floor of council to defund that. That did not happen. I thought, all right, we're good here. There's like 50 action items that are all sort of gradual change, and there was one critical question, and that was the 50 kilometers per hour as the base speed limit in the city, 40 kilometers as it was contemplated in Step Forward, or 30 kilometers, which is an international best practice. Now, I've said many times that a couple months ago I was able to attend a Sustainable Cities Conference in Ottawa put on by the Federation of Canadian Municipalities. I spent a week or a day in workshop there with Mobicon, which is a next generation transportation mobility firm out of the Netherlands, who really are pushing the 30 kilometer per hour movement in everything they do and really bring a lot of science and data to the table. And I saw it was a perfect dovetail with the kind of neighborhood structure we're trying to build in Great Neighborhoods and the kind of neighborhood structure that's emerging as our transform planning process progresses. And that's the idea that within the internal neighborhood streets, it's a 30 kilometer per hour zone. And then when you get onto the edges where neighborhoods meet, you start to speed up and you also start to separate things. And that's where things like cycle tracks and stuff like that come into play. The conversation at committee was that we're not ready to choose 50, 40, or 30 until we have a real conversation with Calgarians. And I supported it. I think some members of council supported it because they didn't want to change 50, and they certainly didn't want to do that without engaging Calgarians. I supported it because I certainly wanted to take the opportunity to engage Calgarians about what best practices were. And I think when you start looking at the data and you start understanding where the entire international community is going with regard to human-car interactions, 30 kilometers makes sense in our residential hoods. And if there's one thing my office gets a lot of, it's people calling saying cars are speeding through our neighborhood. So I fully expected with that move in committee that we would basically take steps to engage Calgarians over the next 6 months before we come up to the mid-cycle budget adjustments. I was really shocked that council decided to defund that conversation and basically ignore the 50, 40, or 30 kilometer per hour question. So for the foreseeable future, unfortunately, we're going to be a 50 kilometer per hour city. I think it's just a matter of time before international events catch up with us, and we're going to have to start to react. But let's keep in mind that when we say 30 kilometers per hour, we know that people only drive as fast as they feel safe driving. And most of the design speed on our roads is 50, 60 kilometers an hour. And so you can post limits till you're blue in the face, and you can write tickets till you're blue in the face. People aren't going to change their habits until you start physically changing the roads. And if we consider that, 70 years ago, our tiny little prairie town on the edge of the mountains spent the last 70 years building the most per capita vehicle lanes road system in North America, in the world. We've got more roads per capita in Calgary than anywhere else. This kind of shift to a 30 kilometer per hour is a generational proposition, and I'm of the opinion that we have to get it started as soon as possible. And it starts with a conversation. So I'm bitterly disappointed we're not talking to Calgarians right now, but you better believe I will continue to push for that. And on the plus side, we did unanimously support the pedestrian strategy. Make sure you let your councillor know that come budget adjustments, this is something we need to support funding for. Otherwise, the whole thing is just moot. Anyway, Councillor Gian-Carlo Carra signing off.